You ever feel like you could disappear, and no one would even blink? That's how it's always been in my house. My name is Clara Evans, 26 years old, the middle child who wasn't really there. Not the troublemaker, not the golden one, just the one who quietly filled the space between. Dinner at the Evans home looked perfect from the outside. The table was set with polished silver. The crystal glasses reflected the chandelier, like we were in some magazine spread. My mother, Elaine Evans, believed appearances were everything. She could smile at you while sharpening the knife behind her back. My father, Robert, was the kind of man who spoke in rules and expectations, not feelings. And then there was Jason, my older brother, the favorite, the one who could set the house on fire and somehow still be called responsible. That night, Elaine was laughing a high, polished laugh that filled every corner of the room. Jason got another call from his old boss. She announced proudly, "They want him back at the firm. He has so much potential." Jason grinned like a prince. He hadn't worked a full week in months. But that didn't matter. To them. He was always just going through a phase. I sat across from them, my fork quietly scraping the plate. I waited for a pause in the conversation, the smallest window to speak. When it came, I said, "I got promoted today. I'll be leading the design pitch next month." For a moment, silence fell. Then my mother smiled, the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "That's nice, dear. But don't overwork yourself. Women burn out faster than men. You should think about starting a family before it's too late." My words hung in the air like smoke. Jason smirked. "Guess you'll have to put that big promotion on hold." Then Robert chuckled, not even looking up from his plate. "Let your brother handle the serious career stuff. Clara, you've always been better with the small details." Small details. That was me. The one who filled in the gaps, picked up the slack, made everything look effortless. I pushed my food around, watching the mashed potatoes slide across the plate. Hannah, my best friend, since college, had texted me earlier, "You coming to the gallery tonight?" I hadn't replied. I didn't want to admit that I still had to ask permission like a teenager. Elaine interrupted my thoughts. "Clara, the dishes are yours tonight. Jason has that interview tomorrow. He needs to rest." Jason leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms. "Don't forget to wipe the counters. This time, sis." I nodded. "Sure." My voice, barely a whisper. That's the thing about growing up invisible. You learn to exist quietly. You learn that resistance only makes the silence louder. But as I collected the plates, I caught my reflection in the window, my own eyes looking back, tired but awake. And for a second, I wondered what would happen if I stopped playing my part. The thought vanished as quickly as it came. Jason laughed at something on his phone. My parents kept talking about his future, and I stood there, holding a stack of plates heavy enough to break, thinking if no one notices when you're gone, maybe it's time to leave the room. Morning came with the same routine, the kind that felt scripted. The clatter of dishes, the buzz of my father's razor, the sound of my mother's voice giving orders before her first cup of coffee. I was up early, as always, packing lunches that weren't mine, folding laundry that wasn't worn by me. Jason slept in, he always did, when he finally appeared, hair tousled, still in his pajamas. My mother smiled like the sun had risen just for him. "You need to eat, Jason," she said, placing a plate in front of him. "You'll need your energy for that interview." He didn't even say thanks, just scrolled through his phone. While I mopped up the coffee, he spilled, "You should be more supportive of your brother," my father said casually. "He's under a lot of pressure right now." Pressure. That was their word for every mess Jason made when he missed work. It was pressure. When he crashed the family car last year. Pressure again when I worked double shifts to pay my student loans. They said, "You're so stubborn. Clara, you don't have to prove anything." But maybe I did. Maybe I just wanted to be seen as more than the background noise of this family. At work, my manager praised my designs, said I had an eye for balance. I wished someone at home could see that too. That evening, I came home to find the living room a mess, Jason's shoes on the couch, snack wrappers on the floor. I bent down to pick them up out of habit. My mother walked in just then, holding a stack of mail. "Jason got another credit card offer," she said brightly. "Such good timing. He might finally get back on his feet." I opened my mouth to ask about the pile of bills with my name on them, but she was already talking about Jason's potential. When I turned to leave, she added softly, "Dinner's at 7. Don't be late. You know how your father gets when the table isn't set." I nodded again. Always the helper, the quiet one who kept everything running while everyone else took the credit. And, for the first time, I realized if I stopped helping, the whole house might finally notice what I'd been holding together all along. Saturday night should have been ordinary, the kind of night where nothing happens. I had just finished a long shift at the design studio, my hands still smelling like ink and paper. The porch light at home was on, casting that familiar warm glow across the front steps. For a moment, I let myself think maybe it would be peaceful tonight. I was wrong. The first thing I saw when I walked inside was Jason on the couch, controller in hand, his eyes glued to the screen, a half-eaten plate of food, sat on the coffee table. The smell of spilled soda hung in the air. My backpack lay open on the floor, my folders scattered like trash. "Jason," I said slowly, my voice already tight. "What happened to my work?" He didn't look away from the game. "Needed some paper. Took a few sheets." I picked up the empty notebook cover, the pages torn out down to the spine, my sketches, my notes, the presentation I spent the whole week perfecting gone. You ripped out my designs. I could feel my pulse hammering. Jason finally glanced over, a lazy smile pulling at his mouth. "Relax, Clara. It's just some dumb drawings. Not like you're doing anything important." Anyway, that sentence hit harder than I expected. Maybe because deep down, I knew that's exactly how he saw me. "How they all did, where are they?" I asked, my voice lower now. He shrugged, probably in the trash. Something in me went still, not angry, just cold. I took a step toward the kitchen, ready to clean up the mess, ready to pretend it didn't matter again. But then the front door opened. Elaine and Robert walked in, laughing about something. Some inside joke I wasn't a part of. The laughter died the moment they saw my face. "What's with the attitude?" Robert asked, his eyes narrowing. "Ask him," I said, pointing at Jason. "He tore up my work, my presentation for Monday." Elaine barely looked at him. "It's just paper, Clara." I waited for more, for a simple, "That wasn't right, Jason." But nothing came. Instead, Jason's voice cut through the silence, mocking. "Yeah, it's just paper." I couldn't stop the bitter laugh that escaped my mouth. "Of course." I turned toward the stairs, but my father's voice stopped me. "You know, this attitude of yours is exactly why no one wants to be around you." My stomach dropped. What Elaine sighed like she was exhausted. "You overreact to everything, always playing the victim." Jason leaned back on the couch, arms behind his head, smirking. "She's right. No one wants you here, Clara." And then it happened, the thing that broke whatever was left of me. My parents didn't say a word. They just nodded, as if it was a fact they'd all agreed on a long time ago. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just stood there until the silence felt too heavy to breathe in. Then I whispered, "Okay." I walked upstairs, packed a bag with whatever fit, and left. The house that never saw me wouldn't notice I was gone. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being invisible. I was finally free. The air outside felt different that night. Colder, sharper, like the world had been waiting for me to step out of that house. I walked down the street with my bag slung over my shoulder, the sound of my father's words still echoing in my head. "No one wants you here," it played over and over, but instead of hurting, it started to lose its power. Every step I took made it smaller. The sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that promised rain. I didn't care. My feet moved on their own. Past the grocery store where I used to work weekends. Past the old park bench, where Jason and his friends used to laugh at me for sketching designs instead of doing something useful. I kept walking until my legs shook. When the first raindrop hit my face, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through contacts. There weren't many people I could call, but there was one Hannah Reed, the only person who ever treated me like I wasn't invisible. She answered on the second ring. "Clara, it's late." "Are you okay?" My voice cracked a little. Can I stay with you tonight?" She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. Of course. I'll leave the door unlocked. 15 minutes later, I was standing outside her apartment complex, soaked through, my hair plastered to my face. The warm light from her window looked almost unbelievable, like something out of a dream. When she opened the door, she didn't say anything. She just pulled me in and handed me a blanket. "Thanks," I whispered, my hands still trembling. Hannah gave me that look, the one that meant she knew I was trying not to fall apart. "You don't have to explain right now. Just sit, breathe." For a while, I just sat there on her couch, listening to the rain tap against the glass. The quiet wasn't empty, like it was at home. It was safe. Later, when she brought me a cup of tea, I finally spoke. "They said no one wanted me there." Hannah shook her head. "Then they don't deserve you." The words hit something inside me, not pain, but relief. The kind that comes when you finally stop pretending. That night, wrapped in a soft blanket that smelled like cinnamon and laundry soap, I realized something I'd never let myself believe before. Maybe being alone didn't mean being unwanted. Maybe it meant finally belonging to myself. And as the rain fell harder, outside, I let the sound wash over me, like it was erasing every word they'd ever used to make me feel small. Morning light slipped through the curtains, soft and unfamiliar. For the first time in years, I woke up without the sound of my mother's voice or the weight of expectations pressing down on my chest. Hannah's apartment smelled like coffee and warm bread, the kind of smell that made you believe the world could be gentle. I sat there for a while, wrapped in the blanket she gave me, trying to let the quiet sink in. My phone was still face down on the coffee table. I hadn't checked it since I left. Part of me wanted to keep it that way, to pretend that last night was just a dream, that I'd wake up in a life where I wasn't constantly fighting to be seen. But curiosity has a cruel sense of timing. When I finally picked it up, the screen lit up with notifications, 12 missed calls, 5 voicemails, and a handful of texts, all from the same 3 names: Mom, Dad, Jason. The first message from Elaine: "Read, you're being immature. Come home and stop this drama. The second, enough of this. You're embarrassing the family. Then my father. This is nonsense. Clara, you need to grow up and come back." I scrolled past them all until I reached the last one. It was from my mother. The words were short, panicked. "Come home now. We have a problem." My fingers hovered over the screen. A problem. That word stopped me cold. I didn't want to care. Didn't want to be pulled back into their chaos, but curiosity, or maybe habit. 1. I typed 2 words. What happened? The reply came almost instantly. "It's Jason. He's been arrested." I read it twice. Then a third time. My heart didn't race. It just stopped. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. Jason, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one they built their entire world around. And now, that world was cracking. Hannah walked in from the kitchen, 2 mugs of coffee in her hands. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I let out a quiet laugh. Close enough. I handed her my phone, letting her read the message. She raised her eyebrows. Wow. Guess karma finally checked its calendar. Her joke should have made me smile, but it just felt heavy. They don't miss me. Hannah. They just need me. Big difference. Hannah sat down beside me. Her voice, calm but firm. Then don't go running. Make them feel what you felt. Her words hung in the air like a dare. I looked at the phone again. The calls kept coming, one after another, like desperation had a rhythm, and maybe, just maybe, I wanted to hear what they sounded like when they realized I wasn't their safety net anymore. By the time the ringing finally stopped, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't going back for them. I was going back to see what it looked like when the people who made me feel small finally had to look up. The drive back to my parents' house felt like traveling through a ghost story, the kind where you already know how it ends. The roads were familiar, the same suburban streets I used to bike down as a kid, but everything looked smaller now, like it had shrunk to match what I felt for that place. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the clouds were thick and low, ready to burst. Robert Evans was on the porch, pacing with his phone pressed against his ear. Elaine sat on the steps, her hair messy, her face pale and wet with either tears or rain, I couldn't tell which. When she looked up and saw me, relief flashed across her face, followed by shame. "Clara," she said, standing quickly. "Thank God you came." I closed the car door, my heart steady, my voice even. "I didn't say I came to help. I said I'd listen." Robert ended his call, shoving the phone into his pocket. "We don't have time for attitude. Your brother's in trouble." I got that part. I replied, "You texted me 12 times. He looked me over. The same disapproving gaze he'd used my entire life. "This isn't about the past. Clara, this is about family." I let out a quiet laugh. Funny. Last night, family meant being told no one wanted me around. Guess that definition changes when you need money. Elaine flinched. "Please don't start. Jason made a mistake. He took something from the wrong people. They're pressing charges, and we need 10,000 for bail." Her voice cracked on the word need. It almost sounded like love. But I knew better. "What did he take?" I asked. Robert rubbed a hand over his face. "It doesn't matter. What matters is getting him out before things get worse." "It always doesn't matter when it's Jason." I said. "You said the same thing when he crashed the car, when he lied about college, when he took my savings. You never cared who got hurt, only that he was protected." Elaine reached for my arm, her voice soft, pleading. "You're his sister. You can't just stand there and watch him suffer." I pulled my arm away. "You watched me suffer every day under this roof. You just pretended not to see it. For the first time." Robert looked uncertain. "You think this is the time to lecture us?" "No," I said. "This is the time to be honest." The rain finally started slow drops at first, then a steady pour. We stood there, getting soaked, no one moving. Elaine's voice trembled. "We're not asking you to forget everything. We're just asking you to help. I repeated, tasting the word, the same word you used when you made me clean up Jason's messes. The same word you used when you needed a loan but couldn't remember my birthday. You don't want my help. You want my silence, and I'm done giving it." Robert stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "You think you're better than us now because you have a job and a few dollars saved." I met his gaze without flinching. "No, I just finally know my worth and it's not for sale." Elaine's voice broke completely. "Please, Clara, he's our son." I nodded slowly. "Exactly. He's your son, and you made it very clear last night that I wasn't part of this family." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard in that yard. "I hope you figure it out," I said finally. "You always do. Somehow." As I turned back toward the car, Robert shouted after me, "Don't you dare walk away from us." I glanced over my shoulder, my hair sticking to my face from the rain. "You already did it first." Then I got in the car. slammed the door, and drove off, leaving their voices, their lies, and their chaos to drown in the storm they created. The rain had stopped by the time I got back to Hannah's apartment, but my hands were still shaking. The drive home felt like a blur, streetlights melting into the wet asphalt, my father's shouting still echoing in my ears. I kicked off my shoes at the door, dropped my bag on the floor, and sank onto the couch like every ounce of energy had finally drained out of me. Hannah looked up from her laptop. "So, what happened?" I let out a short laugh, the kind that doesn't sound like a laugh at all. "They needed $10,000 to bail Jason out." She raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. They didn't say sorry first." "Of course not. They don't apologize. They just expect." I pulled out my phone. Another message from Elaine popped up before I could even set it down. "Please, Clara, we know you're angry. Just help us this once. We'll pay you back." The word please looked strange coming from her, like a language she wasn't fluent in. I typed slowly, letting each word sink in before I hit send. "I'll help on one condition." The reply came almost immediately. "Anything." I took a deep breath and typed again. "You dad. And Jason, post a public apology in the family Facebook group. You admit what you've done to me, and you thank me for helping you." For a few minutes, there was nothing but silence. Then the messages started pouring in. "This isn't funny." "Stop being petty, Clara. You're acting like a child." And finally, from my mother, "We'll do it." I didn't expect them to agree so quickly. Maybe desperation makes people honest, or at least pretend to be. It took them 2 hours. I could picture it, my father pacing, my mother typing, Jason snarling at the keyboard. Then the notification appeared on my screen. "We owe our daughter, Clara Evans, an apology. We didn't treat her fairly. We see that now. We're grateful for her generosity in helping us during a difficult time." It was cold, formal, and clearly written through gritted teeth, but it was public. Everyone could see. Hannah read it over my shoulder and whistled. That's a new record for humiliation. I smiled. But there was no triumph in it, just a quiet kind of closure. Guess they finally said the words I've been waiting for. She looked at me. "So you're really going to help them?" I took a sip of my coffee, let the steam fog my glasses a little, then shook my head. "No." I said I wanted an apology, not a transaction. My phone buzzed again, a flood of messages. Asking if the money was coming, I turned it face down on the table. "Sometimes," I said softly, "justice isn't about what you give, it's about what you finally stop giving." Hannah nodded, smiling like she understood exactly what I meant. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt untouchable. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain again, soft and steady against the windows. My phone sat on the coffee table, silent, for the first time in days. For a moment, I thought maybe they'd given up. Then the screen lit up. 5 new messages, all from home. The first one was from my father. "We had to sell the TV and my clubs. This is getting out of hand." The second from my mother. "Please, Clara, we don't know what to do anymore." The third, of course, from Jason. "When I get out, you'll regret this, I swear." I couldn't help but laugh. The same brother who once said, "No one wanted me around, now needed me more than anyone." I typed back one line, that's strong language for someone who needs my help. "Try again." No reply came, just silence. Over the next few days, their messages shifted from anger to desperation. My mother wrote about how the neighbors were talking, how embarrassing it all was. My father asked if I could at least lend half. Jason's friends had stopped visiting, and the calls from the lawyer were getting worse. Every word they sent felt like a confession, proof that the house I once called home was finally collapsing under its own weight. Hannah watched me scroll through the messages. One evening, a curious look on her face. "You don't feel bad at all?" she asked. I thought about it. The answer was complicated, not bad. I said, just finished. She nodded slowly. They're finally learning what you already knew. I smiled. That love without respect isn't love at all. Another message came in just then, from my mother, again. We're sorry. Please, can we talk? I set the phone down without answering. The sound of rain deepened outside, and for the first time, I realized something beautiful. I didn't need their words anymore. I already had my peace. A week passed before the calls finally stopped. The silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was sacred. I still checked my phone sometimes out of habit, half expecting another plea, another excuse, but there was nothing, just quiet. Hannah and I sat in a small cafe. Downtown one morning, the kind with scratched tables and coffee that smelled like burnt sugar. I had my laptop open, working on a new design project. My first freelance client, my own name on the contract. Looks like you're finally doing it. Hannah said, smiling over her mug. I guess I am. I watched the cursor blink on the screen. My reflection in the glass behind it, someone who looked a little older, a little lighter. Outside, the world moved on. Cars passed, people laughed. Someone walked a dog in the rain. All the ordinary things that used to feel so far away from me now looked beautiful. My phone buzzed once. A new message. From my mother. The preview line read, We're trying to make things right. I locked the screen without reading the rest. Maybe one day I'd open it. But not today. Today wasn't about them. It was about me. Hannah leaned back. So what now? I smiled, closing the laptop. Now, I build something that's mine. No apologies, no permission. When we stepped outside, the sky was clear for the first time in days. The pavement still shimmered with the aftermath of the rain. And the air smelled like fresh starts. I took a deep breath, letting it fill me, letting it settle. They taught me what love isn't. I said quietly. Now I'm learning what peace is, and for the first time in my life, I knew I wasn't running anymore. I was finally home.